everybody, and welcome back to episode 4 of A Song and a Book. I am Book, that is Ishita,
And I am Song, that is Bhavya.
and we are just two friends who are raging feminists and wanted to put our opinions on the internet because our couch conversations are just that good. And we had the time, we know how to edit, and we also know how to use a bunch of editing apps. So you're like, why not?
Definitely. And today's topic is quite close to me because I'm a marketing girly and I always felt like there are so many things that are not a necessity but made us feel some type of way or we want to buy a certain product because it was feeded into our brains. And especially for women, that actually adds to a lot of pink tax. So that's why we name our episode.
'Cause we are living in a material world, and I am a material girl.
Because we are living in a material world, and I am a material girl. Am I? You'll get to know. So I would like to just blabber on the fact that it is always quoted necessity is the mother of invention, but as I studied marketing, I understood that no, necessity is not the mother of invention. There are a lot of time where ads and marketing have made us feel like we need the product, and that is why that product was invented. Otherwise, it was not needed at all. And this comes after thoroughly reading the story of a razor company and how the razor industry for women was built. So razors started coming, like razor and blades, they started coming in from the early 1800s, where men basically used to shave their beards. And at first they used to be like, just they used to have a lot of Nixon cuts. So the blades were designed in such a way that they can be handled properly. That gave rise to the handwala razors that we see nowadays, with the creams and the kits that came over the years. And by the 1900s, when the World War took place, both the world wars, razor kits were sold a lot. Like, their consumption increased, and even the US military used to promote razor kits. And that's how the adoption of razor kits become industrialized. Um, it became an emerging industry. In the 1920s, what happened was
World War III.
women's rights were increasing. Women were also fighting for their rights, and as they rose, before that, women used to always like just wear long sleeve clothing, covered up clothing, and the style started emerging. Like sleeveless came in, shorter skirts came in, where legs are seen and everything. Um, Tweezers were used earlier just to remove the facial hairs and look clean, but like, the shaved and waxed look, it was never um
The woman's
never
curriculum.
shamed. Yeah, it was never shamed. It was very normal, and even the men and women accepted it a lot. In the 1920s, as the rights emerged, the marketers of razor companies saw that there is a lot of potential and untapped customer market. That's when they decided to advertise it to and for women. So in 1920s, the first ad came up where they basically showed a woman in swimwear with her arms raised, and it was like, if you want to be clean, you need to have like shaped armpits. And that is the narrative. One ad came in, two ad came in, and that is the narrative that flew across, and women started shaving hair. So it was basically shame induced marketing that started. Again, in the 1940s, one incident happened, that was the nylon shortage across the world.
Nylon the fabric.
Yes. And due to that, women were not getting new stockings to wear. Again, the advertising industry and the marketing companies and the razor industry, they saw it as a potential to advertise and market razors for shaving legs. And women used to paint their legs during that time to not show their leg hair.
Okay.
This used to happen a lot, and after that, razors came in, and everyone started using razors. And today, At this point of time, it is a $2 billion industry.
Put that money in my bank account.
I know,
I will
right?
feed Africa with that money.
And
What the hell?
it's such a weird thing that why do people not question things like this? It's basically shame-induced marketing, and women.
Just
Um,
keep falling for it time and time again,
Yeah,
year after year, centuries after century.
yeah, and this also makes me ask the question to you, Shita. What are the products that you feel are very unnecessary? They are just like marketing gimmicks that we are using.
The nail extensions,
Mhm.
unnecessary. It is very painful when you chip it.
Okay.
It does not let you type easily, and if you are somebody like I now wash my own clothes and everything, so you cannot do that with extensions because if kalti se bhi, if anything hits it, it literally jolts a shock
Oh
through
my
your
god.
body. It's too bad.
You know what?
Useless.
I have never gotten nail extensions because I play guitar,
Huh.
and now I'm like, okay, it's good that I have not.
I mean,
gotten
even you will play like two chords at the same time. I would say your finger will touch one, the nail will touch
Yeah,
the
I
other.
mean, I won't be able to play, but
Yeah.
I have seen Dolly Parton play it. I don't know how she
Yeah.
does that. But again, the fact that most
Practice.
guitarists would never have like longer nails
Mm.
or rarely longer nails, and even I feel like instead of using extensions, they would like to grow it naturally.
I mean, to
That's-
each one
that's-
their own, but I feel it's like an unnecessary industry which now has become like a necessity in a particular social strata. Ki nahi kara hai, so you don't look as feminine as you should.
And even the baddie emoji is like those
yeah, the
nails, no?
nails. Oh, that shape fair. Flaunt your curves.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And that also makes me question that do we forget how natural bodies look? Like it's very normal for a woman to have healthy fat. It's very natural for anyone, like men
Yeah,
and
and
women
women's
both to
fat
have, like,
is not distributed in the manner of man's fat is. And I think women who came up with shapewear were aspiring to look like a man because they had to hide their feminine body parts in order to fit into the man's world to get jobs. Now we don't need it. It is now just a, like you said, it's a shame induced market that hanging fat, hide it with this shapewear. Another that I can think of right now is those fat loss products and even these hair growth products, those gummies and all that have come into the market recently.
Yeah.
What is the point of it?
You know, before gummies existed, there were things called natural foods and fruits and nutritions to eat that make your skin and hair glow.
Now everybody is just eating pills every morning. Somebody is popping curcumin. Do you really
What's
need
curcumin?
it? It is something that you find in haldi.
Haldi?
Turmeric. What do you call it?
Haldi doodh piyo na bro.
The golden tea latte. Come on. I just don't understand why we are making a market segment out of almost everything. What about you? Like, what do you think is like an unnecessary thing out there?
I feel like differentiating between women's cereals and men's cereal. I am like,
खाने वाले देखने
yeah,
वाले.
yeah, khane wale.
Oh.
The CEREALS. I'm like, you don't need that. I feel like it's
It is the same amount of
thing.
sugar.
Same amount of sugar, exactly, and the same thing with drinks, chocolate drinks. Different for women, different for men, different for female kids, and different for male kids. How does that matter? I am like, why? And women's drinks cost more for like some 25% ingredient change.
Pink tax, basically. They have to justify the pink tax. Or
Why?
the luxury tax. Luxury tax is also something that women have to face for their
It's
products a lot.
so unnecessary.
It's not a necessity, but it is believed to be one. Marketing. So, Bhavya, how has the portrayal of women changed over the years in the world of advertising?
So it's very interesting to see that everything that happens in the market and in the media the response to whatever has happened in the history. So what's the world condition and how is the world moving? Marketers take that into account and use it for themselves to create a narrative around it. And in 1940s, I would say, because before that, I think till the 1920s, ads were heavily just in newspapers and in print media basically. Now this used to happen a lot. In 1940s, one thing happened, that was during the World War, women were told to go in the manufacturing industries and start working because men were participating in the armies. That was the time where this one figure called Rosie the Riveter, who is, again, whenever I think about this I get chills, but yeah, Rosie the Riveter, she was showcased as the face of working women. She was like a very strong woman, short hair. She used to wear like a red outfit, a red shirt and pants that showcase that women can handle the household as well as the work that they're
Workspace.
doing. After 1948,
Okay.
yeah, when men came back from the World War, this narrative again, वो it गायब हो गया.
Of course, because women were not required to work anymore. The men were there to work. Women could go back to having babies.
Yeah, and that's when the women population was not. So 1940s to 1960s, in any kind of media, it was rarely that you saw women in a working space or women handling tasks, because again, as you said, men were back in the industries, and there were a lot of there were a lot of women who were working. And I have like a data point just for it, that despite the fact that over 40% of the women worked, according to the Journal of Marketing Research study, only 7% of women were shown in the working roles in advertisements, whereas men was 60%. So again, the fact that the whole housewife, being a housewife, handling things at home, being very feminine, cooking, cleaning, all of these products incorporated the whole imagery of how women should like be involved in household tasks. And again, the fact that checked aprons, the kind of dresses, and the kind of hairstyle that emerged, it was again very what I would say, forced.
Forced.
Forced,
Okay.
forced as in one should look this way in order to be a perfect housewife.
So you just have to look like the same thing. Like it was like copies after copies.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So again, this was also seen in the media and their depictions, whether it was ads, and again the sexual objectification of women, that women should look this way. The whole Marilyn Monroe becoming famous during that time, and beauty products, styling and fashion, the products and the kind of perfumes, the kind of smell women should wear, the kind of dresses women should wear, it all emerged during that time. This timeline I'm talking about, 1940s to 1960s, this thing revolved around.
Okay.
Now things started changing a bit after 1965 because of the women's liberation movement, and I love to talk about it because 1967-68 is the time when we also saw women in rock emerging. And again, as I tell you, Stevie Nicks, Joan Jett, and then the band Heart, all of those bands emerged in late 60s, 70s, and early 80s because of the whole
Liberation.
the women's liberation movement that went from 1960s to 1980s. This was the time when the depiction of women changed. The kind of dresses they wore in advertisements, the kind of style they carried in the advertisements and in media changed. Some were shown as hippies, some were shown as carrying like the whole professional look,
Like multipolarity
definitely.
of womenhood came up.
Yes.
Okay.
And even brands like I would say a lot of perfume brands as well as a lot of fashion brands, they took up professional styling in women. So like
Okay.
the suits and the pants and the heels, they started emerging in a certain way for women during that time. So the whole chic fashion,
Oh.
it started from the 70s. The whole boho fashion, that started from the 70s, because um, it was all about liberation. It was all about women asking for rights, women fighting for it, and women representing themselves as truly who they are.
Hmm.
Again, my icons, my women in rock. I say this because that is the time you will see very different kind of artists emerging. You will see Stevie Nicks, Joan Jett, and why I talk about them is, again, rock was also a field that was pretty male dominated, and I always feel that rock and roll is a very free spirited
Hmm.
genre.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we see that culture is emerging in the media, we also see that a lot of people who are into that kind of media, into that kind of music, into that kind of art, they get involved and they take away from it. They also question things, they also rebel against things, and that's how systems change basically.
Hmm.
But again, in the 1980s, when uh, the women's liberation movement was over, when they got their rights, again the whole persona, the whole marketing of women shifted in a way that it's very subtle. So what marketers took away from the liberation movement was, now women want to be free.
Yeah.
How can we show them as free, but again
Tradition.
change the way they think of being free?
Uh-huh.
So it's like they started showcasing the whole definition that, you can wear whatever you want, but again, you would want to look a certain way for the male gaze.
No, the male gaze is actually something that Laura Mulvey came up with. And she basically says that when we talk about the male gaze, we are imagining that the audience, which is at the receiving end of the media, like say film or your ad or even your music video, is a man who is heterosexual and is looking at women for the sake of pleasure and also for the sake of looking at her and not really understanding her, because he's a man, so he has a male point of view of looking at things.
Mhm.
And that is the entire male gaze that ads basically corresponded to for even now they do that.
Yeah, yeah, and that is how the whole sexualizing women thing came up. Then the ads were shown, drinks and food and beverages ad was shown, comparing women, like one
Yeah.
woman in a certain way and the other in a certain way, and people are attracted to the um, you know woman who is more sexually appealing in the male gaze, for the male gaze.
Hmm.
So that kind of advertising started happening from 1980s. We always see this from the 1980s. There was this obsession with being thin that started from the 1980s. Before that, you would see curvy women taking this spot. So coming to the 2000s ads, where again women had their rights, they questioned everything. Then the whole narrative of superwoman emerged. Women handling their houses as well as their work, and it was depicted in a whole new good light. But the problem with that is, when a man is expected to just work, then why is a woman expected to do both? Both are humans, and that is how responsibility, pressure, and anxiety, that I have to do this, I have to
Yeah.
be this, came in. And again, I think we are also kind of victim to that.
We
That we
grew up
want to do
with that,
it.
so we got conditioned to it at a very
Exactly,
young age.
exactly. So again, this is how advertising has emerged, and it still is problematic. Now that I've blabbered a lot about how the portrayal was shown from the older days to now, um, I would like to ask you, how do you think was the socio-cultural narrative portrayed by ads?
So basically, these ads are a reflection of society itself. And let me just talk from an Indian perspective right now. So in India, we first had the British era ads, where we had the entire imagery of Bharat Mata come in to sell British products so that Indians could trust the Britishers and buy their products. And then you take our independence, that is 1947, you take it to the 1990s, where our post coloniality is being enmeshed with globalization. Over here, we are having a complete Western import of ideas in terms of what urbanization looks like, in terms of what having a cosmopolitan life looks like. So, advertisements became a lifeline towards building an aspirational way of cosmopolitanism.
Mm.
So, aspirations, hopes are what advertisements started building, and they created this market of wanting.
Right.
Even like you said, there was no necessity, but marketing came in and it created that mother of invention, right? So
Definitely.
that happened, and ads in this case had to reflect the social cultural milieu that they grew out of.
Mm.
So they represented Indian women as traditional, but they also juxtaposed it with Indian women being portrayed as very independent, workaholic, very promiscuous also. And that created a very weird kind of dichotomy as to who is a real Indian woman.
Mm. Mm.
What exactly it is to be an Indian woman became a question that women asked. Because, like you already mentioned, these ads were for the male gaze, and it left women confused about their standing in society.
Right, right.
And so, over here, people will also say that men are also used in ads, men are also sexualized in the ads, men are also objectified in the ads. So, these, I don't know what to call them,
Pick
these.
me's.
The thing is that historically, culturally, contextually, women have been at the shorter end of the stick. Women are literally like used by patriarchy as pawns, and they are also put into a very derogatory position because of patriarchy. So when ads portray women as infantilized, if they portray them as traditional, then those ads are actually a reflection of what is happening in reality. And if it is not a reflection, then it becomes a reflection, because that is how narratives flow from media to reality. And that is how I feel it interacts with the socio-cultural milieu of the country. And now I also want to talk about this research paper by Malika Das. It's called Gender Role Portrayals in Indian Television Ads. In over here, she basically searches similarities in Hindi, English, and Tamil ads. And then over here, you see how ads become a purveyor to build these gender roles on a stronger grounding. Like, number one, the voiceovers in these ads were done by men. So now, if the overarching narrative is being given by a man, that makes it a man's story, and women mere actors and pawns in that story. Number two, the ads always have young women, always had women who equated youth to beauty. Literally no representation of older women. Another thing, number three, employment. Employment was always something that was in the hand of the man, and the woman was the what do we do now kind of a character in those ads. And even though there were women in these ads, they will still not pass the Bechdel test, I would say.
Yes.
And number four, the relationship portrayed in these ads. Women
So
were
problematic.
women were always dependent on man, and man was always okay. Bye, I'm going to work. You bother about the house now. And over here, what we also see happening is that these ads pretty much also are our everyday life stories.
Definitely, yeah.
Also, these ads always glorify unpaid labor.
Oh my god, talk about it.
No, but over here, what we are seeing in ads is that it is becoming very gendered when they promote unpaid labor.
Mhm.
Labor. We don't see like men not going to work. We see women staying at home with like seven different limbs, doing seven different things at the same time. And even when they have this entire again, like you keep saying, that switching of those ads, and they showed that oh, the man is taking part in the household activity. That was still very performative. Like there was an entire, I think, ad for a washing powder where the father looks at his daughter doing everything in the house alone and he has an epiphany that, oh, that's what she saw me doing. I never participated, so she doesn't expect her partner to participate either. And then a tokenistic, almost like a token, they start working in the household, whereas the actual load and the unpaid care work lies in the hands of the woman.
Again, a created narrative.
I swear. And this can be sorted literally with good quality childcare and public health service. This can be sorted. We have a solution to it, but we choose not to participate in that conversation. So we've spoken about how socioculturally and also historically ads have affected how we perceive womanhood. I just want to understand another thing from you. Like when we talk about women's based products, is there like an undertone and a dark underbelly where male founders profit off of these industries that they create?
So again, definitely, because from the starting, again historically, as I told the whole story, men have been the first ones who the money entered the economy, or who ran the economy. There
Yeah.
were no women at the top during, like, when the World War took place, or when these industries started emerging, capitalization happened, all of that. Even when women started and took their steps into, like, getting into business and starting something of their own, they had less funding access, because again the
The
funding
strong ones are already there. They had established their names.
established. Plus, even if you're starting a new venture with an actual problem that you want to work on, who will give you funding? Men. And then again, men have the bias that, if you are a woman founder, how can we understand that? How can we rely that, you will be using our money? What if you have some home duties? Yep. Coming to, how do you think ads contribute to a culture where women are seen more as objects and bodies over people?
So over here, I would like to talk about Jean Kilborn, who actually has been studying women's portrayals in the world of advertising, the realm of advertising,
Yep.
since the 1960s.
She was a model herself, by the
She
way.
was a French model, yeah. And I recently heard her TED talk, The Dangerous Ways Ads See Women. And the way ads see women is by objectifying them, by portraying them as objects of instant physical gratification, and that further dehumanizes them in the eyes of an untrained mind, which might not have the kind of guidance that some people might require in order to deal with these things, because in India we really don't have a good concept of sex education, and that could lead to an increased number of violent sexual crimes against women.
Of course.
And that is one thing that can happen when you stop seeing somebody as a person. And another thing that these ads do quite effortlessly is that they show women as submissive, meek, and docile. And because of that, that creates, like I mentioned, a kind of cognitive dissonance in the eyes of the male gaze person who is like, that's not how I've seen women in media. So why is this woman like this over here? So that kills a lot of the potential that women have.
And in fact, the whole thing that, women should be this way, that way,
Yeah.
and men get intimidated by strong women.
Exactly. So when ads, basically what they do is that they efface and invisibilize an entire category of women. Women's laughter, women's successes, their struggles, their achievements, like so many different subcategories can be formed out of this.
Yeah.
And another thing that ads effortlessly do well is show women as conquests to be won over, as prizes at the end of a conquest.
Right.
Like, you kill the dragon and Fiona is all yours. That is not how it happens. And the men who fall for this are often men who look like Shrek. So that is something that these advertisements, in my opinion, should really stop advertising.
Yeah, and even the media, I would say, um, it's only recently that we have seen stronger women emerge in media, like, in a way that they're lovable. And stronger women are also someone that you can pursue. No, I sometimes feel like, where is this coming from? Let her be with the guys and girls.
No, but
Bro,
you
what's
have
the
to
problem?
control. What? How can you let a woman just be free and be herself in a social setting if you can very well control her behavior and give her this entire narrative that her behavior, the way that she has constructed it, is wrong, as opposed to this woman that she is seeing on the TV, who is meek, docile, submissive, cannot stand for herself, doesn't have a spine, is only pleasing the men around her, and doesn't really have any aspirations of her own, and is so happy doing household
And
work.
even if they're showing sweet women, graceful women, it's always about, she's sweet and she's not bold and she doesn't talk back. In the older movies,
Yeah.
especially. Okay, I appreciate Rocky Rani for showing Alia Bhatt like that. I love Gully Boy for showing Safina. I love that character. I relate to her so much. I'm like, yeah. So again, that's how media has. Yeah, again, the way that media has portrayed and how we see that happening over the history. Like, why are you doing that to a young girl?
No, but one portrayal that I'm really a big fan of is the Amul girl.
Hmm.
Amul girl has been politically aware since the 1970s, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And she spoke up about the gas tragedy, Bhopal gas tragedy. She recently spoke up about Asha Bhosle's death. And she's also been active in the realm of cricket. She knows everything.
Everything.
And
Yeah.
I love that subversive nature of advertising more than what we see in terms of femvertising, where we just say that men are helping out with the role and the women are the actual pallbearers of this way as well.
Yep.
So that is the kind of portrayal that I would like to see coming in more, because the Amul girl is actually just a girl,
Yeah.
and she is a caricature who does not really represent any sexualized, any kind of male expectations of beauty, and she speaks her thing and she sells her product. It's one of the best brands in India.
Yeah. Definitely.
I mean, the white revolution was Amul.
No one hates Amul.
No one does.
Yeah.
So I think I would like to end this on a positive note by saying that, girls, I know ads are showing you that you have to be hairless, you have to be thin, you have to be somebody who is submissive to your male counterpart, and you have to be somebody who is okay doing all the household work and doesn't really have a life of her own. But be like the Amul girl, read the newspaper, understand what is happening around you, talk to your female friends, talk to your male friends, and hold space for your being.
And if no one allows that space for you, then just hold a bottle and hit their head so hard that they do not come near you.
We don't promote violence. Alright. So, so this is Book,
I am Song.
and you were listening to a Song and a Book podcast. Thank you so much for listening for this entire duration of time. I hope you had a lovely time and that you were able to gain some knowledge through everything that we discussed today, and also maybe have some motivation to see yourself as an individual and not as a narrative.
Yeah, and don't buy those products.
Yes.
Be an active supporter, active questioner,
and
of
consumer.
Yeah.
So, toodles, have a good day, sayonara, see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.